In a way, I had a rather unnatural childhood because, as I say, my mother was having to run a boarding house in order to make enough money to live on, and she depended on me a great deal, and I think talked to me as if I was a grown-up. And she certainly told me a lot of things which normally no mother would ever tell their sons. But we had a very good relationship. And I went to an ordinary school in the locality. Of course, I always had problems at school because of my right leg, of course, which I mean the foot doesn't work really, and that meant I was no good at games and anything active like that. I had what was called a club foot. That in itself is quite an interesting history, really. But anyway, I wasn't very good at games because, well, I'd only got one leg that was really working properly, and there are not many games that you can play like that. So I used to get into a lot of trouble at school because I couldn't balance and that sort of thing, and consequently I can't say that I had a happy childhood, really. I had one very good friend whom I met at school when I was, I suppose, about 7, and we stayed great buddies right up, until he was killed in the war. But other than that, I didn't mix a lot with the other children because I couldn't compete in any way with their ability to be active. So that made my childhood a rather different one. Harry was a very nice boy, and he played the piano. And when we got a bit older, I suppose probably when we were round about 12 or something like that, we used to play together. I had learned to play the violin by then, and he used to come round to my house, or I went to his, and he would play the piano and I would play my violin. And he was a really a great pal. I mean, it was a tragedy to me when he was killed in the war. But at any rate, that was that. Because the teachers had long summer holidays, they would go home, to their parents, or they would go away themselves. And that meant that sometimes in the summer months, she had no income from her boarders. And what she did then was to take visitors from overseas to stay during the summer period, because they were on leave, on the continent somewhere, and they used to come to England to improve their English and get accustomed to English way of life and that sort of thing. So we had these people would come during the summer months. So I had the benefit of talking to different people from various countries in Europe, and I think probably I learned quite a bit. One of them was a chap called Millen, and he was with us for some time, and then when because I should incidentally mention the fact that it was they were a Jewish family, and they were living in Czechoslovakia. Well, when the war started, Millen was staying with us at that time, and his mother said to him, you know, you can't come back. It's too risky. Stay where you are. So he was left, and of course he had no income. My mother did keep him, you know, for several months, I think. But eventually he went. We managed. I think that was done. I think it was done through the church or the Quaker movement. You know, the Society of Friends. But somehow or other, we got contact with some people who lived in a part of London, not far from us, and he was employed to teach the children. They had two boys. He was employed to teach the boys English and also and German. And for doing that, he had free board and lodgings with this family. They were a lovely Christian family who, you know, took a lot of interest in their children, and they took a lot of interest in Millen as well. I mean, he was very happy with them. So he was there. And it was while he was there that his sister, who was living in, I suppose she was living in the Czech Republic, I'm not too sure at the moment, but she was learning to speak English. And his mother said, would I do something to help her daughter learn English? So as a result of that, she used to send me letters, and I used to correct them and then send them back to her corrected. So that was the way I was able to assist her with learning English. Of course, then ultimately that dried up because I don't know, she was shipped somewhere safe, and ultimately, of course, she came to England. So I knew her as a pen friend, you know, for several years before she came to England. And I could write a book about those days in a way, but they were very, very happy memories. She lived in a house of refugees. They were, I think they were all of Jewish origin, but this hostel they lived in had been bought and was maintained by a group of people in a nearby church who raised the money to buy the house. I mean, they were a very, very good Christian family, and so she was there. And she was sent to school. Well, originally she was sent to a sort of very ordinary secondary school because they didn't obviously know what her educational achievements had been. But after she'd been there a very short time, they decided that she was not. It was a waste of education to make her into a good housewife or something, and that she should have a professional training, and consequently she was transferred to another school which was concentrating on people who would ultimately become teachers. So that's how it came about that she was trained as a teacher. Through all that time, I mean, I used to see her, you know, and go out with her from time to time. I had various other girlfriends, of course, at the same time, but I used to take her out, and during the process of walking, of course, I used to talk to her, and she used to answer me, and that's how I started to help her, you know, with her English. But then, of course, she went to a training college, you know, to train as a teacher. So that's sort of how that developed. In the meantime, Millen, I think, got into you know, went into business. Something to do with the artificial jewellery trade. But he got a job, and he did quite well, really. And of course I always maintained contact with them. Well, I maintained contact with Millen, of course, right up until he died. I still have some contact with his wife, because they used to come and visit us when we lived in Kent.